How about now? Can you hear us through the computer? I hear feedback. I think that's not functioning. You're supposed to put something in the text box here in the phone, Sam. That's right. You just use one finger. If you want, no, not that finger. Can you hear me now? Hello? I just wanted you to respond on the text, and I can hear my voice coming through the computer, so that confirms we're working. All right, thanks much. Bye. Okay, so to answer the question of a lifetime, we are able to work here. So I'm going to go back to mute, and looks like we have Maureen and Kathleen are and Pam are listening. So, and Attorney Finn is coming. He actually had an appointment to just like at 4 o'clock or 5 minutes to 4 or something. So he was thought he'd be late, but he promised that any trouble we could get in before he got here, he could get us out of. So, and got a couple of minutes left. Did everybody see the draft minutes that we? Yes. Hot dogs, those look great. All right. Hit the recording button. You might want to stop. And thank you. Record once you. Good.
Recording in progress.
Okay. This is February 19th. It's 2 in the afternoon, and I'm going to call the
4.
I'm sorry.
4.
4 in the afternoon. I'm going to call the Scio Township Compensation Commission meeting to order, and we'll start with a roll call. Commissioner Hergut.
Here.
Commissioner Boyd, that's me. I'm here. Commissioner, whoops. Klubeck.
Present.
Commissioner Greenberg. Present. And Commissioner Jackson. Present. Okay. We first thing we have is adoption of our agenda.
Point of order. I believe that this is the appropriate time of the rules to bring this to attention. It is a document that's attached to our agenda that has incorrect information that I think needs to be corrected. May I present that now?
Sure.
I think that's the right time to do it.
Yeah.
If you don't mind looking at G4, the resolution on compensation. It's interesting because I reviewed them a couple days ago and caught it, and then as I looked at today's attachment, if you open the resolution to the clerk, you'll notice that in the paragraph that starts, whereas the Scio Township Compensation Commission has conducted an extensive review of salaries and compensation for township treasurers, and we have a resolution for the clerk.
Mm-hmm.
And the same error is happening for the supervisor position also.
Okay.
So the second one, and those all carried from the 2023 resolution that all had that same typo or whatever. I just thought perhaps we could make sure we got it corrected. So
Excellent.
just wanted to bring it at the right time. With that change, with the deal.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Any other input on our agenda? All right, hearing none, a motion to adopt the agenda.
I don't know.
And I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda. All right, now, we do have, minutes, draft minutes, and I'm not actually sure if these were attached to the most recent, online,
I still have this one
yeah, okay, all right, so, in the nick of time there, so, has everybody had a chance to review those fine minutes? Don't everybody answer at once. Okay,
And
we need a motion to adopt. Okay, and I'll second that. Any further discussion? Okay, I think, let's vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are approved. Okay, no communications to the Compensation Commission that I'm aware of. Which means we're ready for public comment. And we do have some members of our public. Anybody wishing to comment?
yeah, I'm going to.
Okay.
Would you like to move over?
Be promoted as a presenter.
I would hope so. Okay, I have multiple parties can present, so I think.
The option to choose.
I haven't been able to.
You go over to the right-hand side of
Yeah,
campus.
yeah.
All right.
There's a mouse.
Wow.
That's easy.
That is more easier for me, but well, there was no way to promote anybody.
Oh,
Just,
so
it's allowed to talk and who's behind this button.
promote panelist, there it is.
Did you see come up? Oh, yeah.
Top
okay,
one.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just
Your eyes and my mouse driving. So this is all counting against your 5 minutes. Yeah. Okay. We're good.
I can't remember. I never hit it on the radio.
Anyone else present want to make comments? Public comments?
I don't know, but do almost there, hopefully.
Okay.
Oh, and now we.
Second.
I still don't have a share option.
I haven't given it to you yet. Wait.
Blue meeting icon. Nope. Yeah, there you go.
1 second, Kathleen.
Okay, hello, Kathleen Grant, resident and trustee. I've been watching your meetings and, I've been part of this commission for the 2 prior cycles.
So I became concerned about some of the information that was presented, so, I would like to present some information. First of all, the history of the treasurer's salary. We all know that prior to 2021, the township board set the salaries, and the treasurer's salary was $65,000 for a very long time. I believe that was an intentional action by the board, recognizing that the assessor was doing the tax rolls, and an assistant assessor was acting as the deputy treasurer. So I believe that's how the board set that. During the first compensation discussion cycle, we talked about the salary of the treasurer, and I shared with the commission that the board had delegated Sandy Egler as the deputy treasurer at $105,000 a year. And there was consensus that that treasurer was probably doing most of the work, and it was not justified to increase the treasurer's salary. So, then in the next cycle, recognizing that the treasurer had already stated she was not running for office, I know you were supposed to only look at the position. So we did look at the position very closely, looked at the duties. And at that point is when we decided to bring that salary up to the market value level. So there were some comments about the huge jumps, and let me explain the huge jumps for the salary. I thought was all fairly logical. Now, history of the clerk. Traditionally, the clerk in Scio Township had not done a lot of the statutory duties, including the finance work. When Jessica Flintoff came in, she made a proposal to the board that she would be appointed, take the position with a salary that she felt was fair for doing all of the duties of the clerk. And that board approved unanimously, I believe, and it was set at $84,000 a year. We established that as the market value in the second cycle for the clerk, because the board had deemed that unacceptable. And we took 4 years of CPI values and compounded against that salary. That's how we arrived at the $99,000. It followed a methodology that talked about applying the CPI consistently. Okay, I'll just talk about those two positions. Now I'm going to get into sharing, and I have a presentation that I will give to you, but this way everyone can see it. Okay, so I have copies for everyone. So I wanted to share with you the distinctions between a general law township and a charter township in terms of the supervisor's duties. I will also state that in the prior two cycles, I was the one that did all the data, did all the research. I knew these differences between a general law township and a charter township, and I worked very hard to try to find comparable data. So you have the information about the duties of a general law supervisor. So on the first slide, it talks about that. There are some things that are not applicable. And then on the next slide, talks about the duties for a charter township. And these are vastly different. As you read along here, they're essentially the code enforcement officer. All laws, ordinances are enforced. They will manage and supervise all public improvements, works, undertakings, have charges of construction, repair, maintenance, lighting of streets, maintain and supervise the operations of all township utilities, be responsible for the preservation of property, tools, etc. Make sure all terms and conditions are imposed in the favor of the township, attend all board meetings, be a member of all committees, prepare and administrate the annual budget, add recommendations to the board, be responsible for efficient administration of all departments, act as a purchasing agent, conduct all sales of property, to assume all the duties and responsibility of personnel director and other duties. These duties are vastly different than a general law township. So I now want to talk in the next slide about what I see as you're using incomparable data. I watched your meetings, I listened to you, pull the data, and now that we've established that a charter township is really not the same for supervisory duties, the only one that actually applies in the data that you presented is Hamburg Township. And this is a general law township without a manager. So this supervisor appears to be doing more duties. So I would question why you would be using that data. And then further, this is historical. Prior supervisors and trustees have affirmed the position as part-time. So in the 2021 compensation cycle, Spalding Clark, prior supervisor, you guys cut me off?
No, I'm referring to.
Is this public comment though?
Yeah, this is still public comment.
Are you cutting me off?
Well, we're not cutting you off yet, but you're being a little on the long side.
Yeah.
We do want to hear what you have to say, but Renee has a,
No, we just, I kind of think at our last meeting clarified to us that, and it's in our minutes, it's public, that, there's some discussion about considering a supervisor role being part-time versus full-time. Trying to think, reminded the commission that its role is only to determine an appropriate salary, not make that distinction. So I just want to make sure we weren't getting something we can't use.
Okay.
According to our attorney.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
so
it's in our minutes.
in the prior, 2021 cycle, the prior supervisor, Spalding Clark, Orrin Martin acknowledged he was part-time. Prior supervisor Hathaway submitted a letter and a resolution to affirm the diminished duties. As long as we have an administrator, a manager, a director of operations, and that was also confirmed by Jim Drees, a prior trustee.
okay.
And I just have the evidentiary slides where Hathaway puts in place. So I'm very concerned that the title of your agenda item is salary alignment. So I wanted to state that the roles are different, you might not be using the right data.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other,
I'll be for this.
You want this chair?
I can do that. I think I'll be a little bit more brief.
no,
Your time, I did appreciate your discussion last week and your invitation. It was, I did watch the rest of the meeting afterwards to see how the rest of the discussion went. And
before we go further, we need to-
just read.
Oh, can you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yes, stuff.
Who would have thought after all this?
Excellent.
Go ahead,
So,
Treasurer Gable, you have the floor.
a couple of other points. To your point, I did notice that there also was language about Jim Drees in a couple of those resolutions, that they've been offered by Jim Drees.
And the new one or the 2023, the brand new one?
The brand new ones that are put into the packet. I also saw treasurer be mentioned in several of them, so I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah.
I saw that yesterday. Ultimately, the statutory duties of all the officers are unique and different. That's what was set forth by politicians many years before us. Truly though, treasurer's duties are unique. Supervisors are very unique. I think Trustee Grant is correct when she says that the duties in a general law township are different than those of the charter township. The charter township has a number of additional responsibilities. Doesn't mean that that's just how it is. The clerk and treasurer and general law or charter township have an additional financial responsibility that's different and unique from the supervisor role. That's the other thing that also comes back to this is, fortunately or unfortunately, you know, almost all of you have seen us or worked with us in some capacity. It becomes a little bit emotional because you're attaching to people, but one of the things that Mr. Fink did last time, and I did this time as well, is really about the office. It's the position. It's not the individual salary. The treasurer and clerk require really highly specialized training and data technical execution. Supervisor's roles a bit different, more general, more administrative, high level, and acts as a facilitator. The legal and financial obligations, though, the clerk and the treasurer just provide some level of pay differential. That's commensurate with responsibility. Something that I think is truly important. I know that there was Trustee Brandt brought up a question about discussion that you guys are gonna have later about salary alignment. I did look back because I know there was discussion about the Trustee Brandt some of the past history about the treasurer's salary and different responsibilities. 38.46% was the salary increase for the treasurer's salary that was effective for 1/24. I did apply that to the supervisor commission salary. That would bring it to 61,348.86. Just an idea and a number that's out there is probably there's something to thinking, but Carol watches the yeah, I appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming by.
Thanks,
Brian, we appreciate it.
Yeah, I need you to go back and that percentage, where did that come from?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
That was from, that percentage came from $65,000, which was the treasurer's salary.
Okay.
Report was raised to $90,000.
Okay.
Well, I guess no, I mean, that was a completely different situation.
It was a completely different situation, just as a data point, one of many data points.
And it's 60,
Our graph that came from Jessica, her presentation, is the figures we're working with.
Correct.
216, 225. Is that, I mean, you're seeing that and that brings you to the right. We're good on that?
Yeah.
Okay, we want to make sure we've got the right numbers.
and you mentioned,
What was that for?
That was for the prior treasurer, so, the prior treasurer received $65,000 as their salary until April 1st of 2024, at which point it was increased to $90,000. I'll leave so that way if we don't hold up one.
Which is okay, that would be a public meeting.
Yeah. Any other public comments? Yes, go ahead. You can move over so we get some, yeah.
We played musical chairs.
Yeah, definitely.
Hi, everybody, Jessica Flintoff, Scio Township Clerk. Thank you for, your work, and I know you're in a compressed timeline, I will keep this short. Thank you for allowing me to present last Friday on the down the clerk. Couple, remarks, I have not watched your meeting, but I was made aware of these comps that you were provided, and I just wanted to provide a couple comments. You have covered this in the discussions already, so apologies. One, cities are not comparable to townships. So a lot of times city mayors get paid very little and do a lot more than any township official. City clerks do 2/3 of the job of a township clerk, and kind of the treasurer, finance director, accounting function in cities is different. So I personally don't think that the cities are comparable. Secondly, big difference between, in the memo I provided, for charter townships, the jobs of treasurers and clerks are exactly the same as they are for general law. So for general law, charter, treasurer and clerks are the same. One of the differences is in the job of the supervisor. Statutorily, the charter townships give a lot more statutory responsibility to supervisors. I noticed here there were predominantly charter townships. I will note for the comps that I've used over the years, with the other largest townships in Washtenaw County, they are charter townships. That's Ipsy, Pittsfield, and security. I think those are fair comps for treasurer and clerk, not fair comps for the job of supervisor. So I did want to note that because I had seen that here. I will also share my perspective over the last 6 years, and as somebody who's fought very hard for equity in the pay for staff and elected officials, and I know you're all very focused on that. I appreciate that. You are probably familiar with the kind of crazy historical, right? Right, like this, yeah, like none of us want this, right? And I know that everybody's committed to kind of getting it stable. I will say,
When Jessica,
Yes.
to compliment you and just make sure everybody's on the same sheet. Our original sheet that was presented is not correct as to the title. So thank you for bringing it
Oh,
to me. Last time I wanted to point that out to everybody.
sure,
Did everybody catch that? Just make sure we're looking at the correct data sheets. that
I
what
just
you
added
brought-
the current year.
But that helped us because we were looking at a title of 2016 to present. So I'm.
That was
here
my memo from the
disregard
year before.
That one?
Yeah.
We're working on the one you brought last time. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for
and-
that
and-
data.
You are welcome. And certainly, please be mindful that it wasn't until we got here that we had a compensation commission. So the chaos was board driven. Okay. But I will say I had 2 opportunities here to have a supervisor propose doubling his salary. And I had 2 opportunities to vote no on that. And I stand by that. And I'll tell you why, because even at the time, whether we, the arguments are twofold. One, but I work so many hours, it's full time, or 2, we don't have a manager or something like that, and there's a void to fill. And both of those times, I found that it was not justified. I will say in Scio, we have recently committed to having a director of operations manager type. When you look at, Pittsfield Township, these other charter townships, the supervisor is actually kind of much more of a manager kind of executive in the organization. So I just wanted to share that. I also just want to recognize the time pressure you're under and that it's rather odd to be in the position. I don't think the compensation commission has ever been in the position before that you're in of having of the 4 offices having, what do we have? 4 of the 7 officials are just 3 months into their jobs.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so it's, you're, trying to assess, these various factors, and we've got 4 of the 7. But I would say, everybody works so hard. I want to thank you all. It's difficult, and I just look forward to receiving your determinations, and I look forward to hopefully receiving determinations that the entire board supports. And thank you.
Okay, very good.
And I will, yes.
Public, okay. Can you maybe take the same?
Okay, here.
You got that? All right, Supervisor Carey.
Yeah, so just to be clear, I did present last week, and I did not present anything that had to do with Charter Township as far as my job duties. I did present the 3 charter townships in Washtenaw County. Scio Township is a general law township. It was a charter township for a brief moment, for about 2 years, I heard. It was? Yeah. And then there was a lawsuit, actually, for Flintoff's father was involved with that and was able to reverse the charter township. So Scio Township is a general law township, and we are in the top 56% of charter townships. If you put as far as revenue and whatnot.
In general law.
No, charter township. We're in the top 86% for general law township.
Oh, in terms of revenue?
Revenue and population, yeah,
So we fall right in the middle
of charter township,
charter in 86 percentile of
general law.
general.
Yeah, so we're a very wealthy community. We're also a growing community. By the end of, let's see, in about 3 years, even shorter, we're going to have 20,000 for our population. Right now, we have about 18,000 we would be going in. So the whole discussion about supervisors part-time if you can find a general law or even charter township that has the supervisor part-time and the treasurer and the clerk as full-time, you're not going to find it. In fact, our deputy clerk, excuse me, I am speaking, thank you.
I'm not speaking to
So anyway, our deputy clerk who came from Webster said that they were all in the same. They were full-time, part-time, and then full-time, and they were all equally paid, except later the clerk was paid more because she has more responsibilities. So I'm saying this because, and here's the other thing, supervisor part-time and the other two officers full-time, that gives them an opportunity to run the township without the supervisor. And we were elected, all 7 of us, to be administration of the township. And there's 3 officers that need to be in here full-time. So it doesn't end up being in where certain people have the power and others don't. So to find a general law township supervisor that is part-time, but also has a lower salary, I don't think you're going to find it. Oh, sorry.
Southfield Township, are they in Oakland? And their supervisor is part-time,
Is the clerk and,
they're both full-time,
okay, I did not know that.
according to the data we're given.
Okay.
Right. Anything else?
And also the supervisor, I do not have a deputy. I could appoint one, and actually, it's a lot of work. So having the other 2 have to, by law, have to have deputies, they get a lot of help. And also their deputies are paid 65 and 72,000. And then the supervisor, the clerk and the treasurer are what, 90
Yeah,
something thousand.
Yeah.
Is the,
Okay.
Can we ask,
I don't know. Go
my question is, from what you presented last week and what I'm hearing today, you've got a lot on your plate, and why don't you have a deputy?
I choose not to at this point. I wanted to get acclimated, and plus, there's also, a deputy is going to want at least 65,000 to be compared with the other deputies. And so why spend that extra taxpayer money? I mean, I'm just, in my mind at this point.
Yeah.
But eventually I could.
Okay. Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else, public comment? All right. Do we have anybody online that would like to comment? I don't see any raised hands. Okay, very good. And we do have scheduled for additional public comment at the end of our agenda. Now, please put my hands on our agenda. Okay. All right, so I think we are up to new business, and I'm gonna hand the floor to Attorney Fink. See if, other than our corrections in our draft motions, which I know you'd mentioned. Actually, before you sent them to me, I was thinking you'd find some of those already, but. I'm sorry.
I didn't hear the question.
Oh,
You just want information from me?
well, if you have any.
I don't have anything new.
Okay. The one thing I was mentioning is that before you had even sent me the draft resolutions, you mentioned there were some updates and typos that you need to incorporate, and I think yeah.
I passed the test, I caught them.
I wanted you to have if you didn't have it from the other documents, which I now know that all 5 of you are very good at going back and researching, so you usually have whatever. I wanted you to have a sense of what you would do. And again, you can, as long as you, by next Monday, make a determination of the salaries of the supervisor, clerk, treasurer, and trustees, you will have fulfilled your statutory duties.
Okay. All right. Anything else to share with us? Any questions
Only
for
if you have a question.
Attorney Payne? Okay. No, all right. I think we're good.
You again, there's no budget.
Okay, then let's go ahead to our next item on the agenda, which is talking about the CPI compensation increases. And we,
Can you just tell me where I asked a question on data we just got? At the end, now?
from Kathleen?
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry,
That
from,
might be helpful. I don't know.
Mr. Grant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That will help.
sure.
My only reference that I'm a little confused about, maybe this is a Jim question, but something that you can help with this. The document page, prior supervisors, trustees, appointed supervisor position is part-time. I've already noted that it's been explained to us by legal that we're not supposed to be discussing this, but we seem to be continuing to discuss it. But the one question I have is, there's notations on this page from 2021, 2022, and 2023 talking about that questionable part-time, full-time. But we did receive the data on last presentation from Supervisor Carey, where the township authorized position, and Laura, maybe you can help on this too, that went from 22, 23, all the way up, bringing us to authorized positions of January 28th, 2025. In those graphs, and this is where I'm confused that we even have this discussion, is that the board on all these years, and this is, it was attached to our minutes, got to see this, but it shows the supervisor position continually as a full, whereas it's noted in other areas as budgeted for 24 hours, budgeted for 30 hours. So I'm just trying to figure out why we're even discussing this and if this should be part of our conversation. Once again, I sound like a broken record, but it's new information. I didn't feel that this would change how we base the reference to these previous conversations. I would think a document that has been authorized by the board, and we all got this last week, and I went back to look at it because it shows it basically as a permanent full-time employment with permanent benefits and everything. So I continue to be confused why we keep having this conversation. We've heard from legal. We got this information last week, which if we refer to it in the number of positions, it shows the ones, it shows the half, it shows that. And then again, today we've now gotten another conversations that came from different times during deliberations. I just would really like us to have a clear understanding. Do we need to discuss that or don't we?
The only thing we have to do.
Is our, no, I'd be happy to hear, I just wanted to know before, because it was new information that
I
came
think,
today.
yeah, it's new, it's
I
useful, I don't know how complete it is.
But again, I
don't
was
know if there's
referencing
other
the sheet
information
that's
that-
by the board. I just went back to the board sheet, so I just wanted to put that out there. That's all I brought with questions. I promise.
Well, so are you addressing that question to?
I am addressing
Attorney
whether the
Payne?
information today that was brought on the page that talks about 2021, different people during the compensation commission of previous compensation commission deliberations, should bring any new questions to what was explained to us by legal last week, as well as we have Board of Trustee authorized positions since 2022. So I just want to make sure this didn't change anything that I already understood. If someone had something that brought that to the surface, I'd be happy to listen. I thought we had clarity on this before, so I'm just asking. Part of a meeting.
Well, Commissioner Warren is,
No.
or
Oh,
Commissioner Kluback.
yeah,
is usually.
please. Oh, Lord,
Well,
what the colonel here?
That shows how far we go back.
Yes.
I even have a copy of my notes. Commissioner Kluback is correct that I said your job is not to establish or you don't have authority to say that the supervisor is full-time or part-time.
Okay.
Your job is to determine the salary. You can take all of this information in and it just as somebody who analyzes data and preparing documents and preparing for trial. If I were, and you don't have time to do this, if I were analyzing that document that says full-time, I'd like to know what it said in 2016 and other times before, because it may be that it changed and it may be that it has always said full-time even when Supervisor Clark was half manager, half supervisor. But in reality, it doesn't matter because your job is to say, this is what we think that the position of supervisor, clerk, treasurer, and trustee in Scio Township should be paid for April 1st, 2025 through March 31st, 2026.
Okay.
And so this is, it's not that it's irrelevant.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's just that you take in the information and as I mentioned before, there's no statutory formula. You don't have to fill out a form. I give you those draft resolutions as a vehicle, but you can do it however you want as long as you adopt a resolution and submit it to the clerk at the end of your period, yeah, Friday or by Monday at the latest. So I don't know that that specifically answered your question.
It does, it gives me that it can be, it did, it answered it better, and I appreciate that. I just wanted, because we did get a new document, I wanted to make sure we look at that as well as compare to what we got last week. That's helpful. Thank you. I appreciate
if
that.
I could just ask it with Mr. Patton, so post the video, he deletes the part where I did not say Quebec. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I think that's beaten that horse to death pretty well. All right, so back to our agenda then, the CPI for compensation increases and I think the reason this might be in here is that in previous compensation commissions, we've looked at a variety of different CPIs. And then recently, I think there was an article in Live about different CPIs used for some administrative positions. And then I think our township employees, somebody maybe knows the news on that better than I, but I think there's just a CPI adopted for our township employees. Aurora, can you?
It's before the board on February 25th for 3.1% COLA increase based on that.
All right, I was thinking that was going to happen this last meeting, so. All right, so I would think based on that likely outcome that should be our reference for CPI then for our, yes. Okay. I don't think that we need to have a specific motion for that. I just kind of wanted to bring that other information to the table. And then, all right, so let's talk about supervisor compensation alignment. And I personally will jump in here a little bit. And since I was involved in the previous compensation commissions, and there was a lot of drama related to Supervisor Hathaway, in particular, two things. The one that his position was, his salary was doubled at a time after the compensation commission was already in our law for the township. And so that was a kind of an inappropriate or a mistake, let's say, that Board of Trustees made at that point.
This is 2021 you're referring to it.
I think that's 2021, somebody with more history, yeah, so, yeah. And then the other thing that, just a personal recollection from the previous discussions was when he appeared in front of us, it seemed like he was spending a lot of his time related to the trash discussions. And that was surprising to me at that time that anybody from the township was dealing with that, because that seemed like a service quality issue that should have been in the hands of the vendor, not somebody here in this building to deal with. And I think that had an impact, at least it did on me, in terms of that position. Because if that position was dealing with something like that, it didn't justify the time or the responsibility of a full-time position to me at that point. And I remember having that thought. All right. Other thoughts on the.
I have my own thoughts on how the trash situation was handled. I won't. It's not appropriate to this discussion,
Okay.
but I remember that time period as well, and I remember the drama as an outside observer. My question to you, I actually had in my notes to ask you a question related to that. So you heard from Supervisor Hathaway in 2021, and again, they heard him in 2023. In both cases, there wasn't a lot of information, I guess a lot of fat passed along as to what his actual duties were or what he was doing at his time. You said that his occupation with handling the trash situation made it appear as though he really wasn't spending full time on supervisor duties. Now, based on what we have heard from Supervisor Carey, both last meeting and today, it seems there's a lot on the plate. Do you think that, based on what we've heard and your recollection, do you think Supervisor Hathaway was actually doing most of what Supervisor Carey is doing now or attempting to do? Or was there, in fact, actual fewer duties that he was carrying out?
Well, at various times we did have a township manager working some of those, but like we've talked about, that's kind of the separate category.
Exactly.
But it's one of those things that I don't have a real, 100% grasp on the answer to that question. I can tell you that the duties that Supervisor Carey discussed and her activities seem to be at a higher level, let's say, in terms of the presentation of our township to the public than what I recall from Supervisor Hathaway. And more varied, I guess. But I also, at the same time, I know Supervisor Hathaway did spend a lot of hours attending meetings and such. So,
yes, my understanding though is that the statutory duties didn't change.
that's my understanding too.
So Supervisor Carey provided evidence that she's carrying out her statutory duties. I didn't hear the same thing. Supervisor Hathaway. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just saying we didn't hear the evidence of that. What I'll just state my opinion, because I've done quite a bit of cogitating about this issue. And my feeling on this is I want to base the salary recommendation for the supervisor based on the current activities and effort of the supervisor. I want to take into account what Treasurer Gable and Cliff Flintoff said about their jobs requiring specialized training. Absolutely, I 100% agree with that. At the same time, the supervisor does put in a lot of time. And I want to use the evidence that's before us now and the activities listed as statutory and under ordinance, which was also I'm grateful that she provided that so that we can see what additional duty she has based on ordinances. And the supervisor has to do them. Okay, that takes time, that takes effort. So I'm gonna base my salary recommendation based on what we know now.
Very good. Renee, did you have, I'm sorry, Commissioner Klubeck.
Well, so, thank you so much for the input. I agree on that. In looking at this, I also look at almost every conversation I've heard on new positions that are being recruited within the township process, whether it be a manager, director of operations, a full-time HR, our finance director. Our community is growing at a huge pace. And interesting enough, even to judge apples to apples, we don't know what's happening in another community. We don't know what the demands are of the meetings, different things, but the statutory, I agree, and I would support the fact that I see a definite attention to detail and a willingness to grow with the township need. And that's what I look for in the three trio of the elected officers in any organization, as well as in this township. And would like to think that a presentation of getting them all on board, it's what Ryan said last week, Treasurer said last week, the community is getting more on board in here at Scio, at the building, involved in meetings. They want to talk to officers. They want to know that the teams are on board at full strength. And I believe that we have not seen, there's been a great deal of confusion. I think it was a great recommendation coming here from Commissioner Jackson that we look at what is here in right now. Interesting, the comment that came on the documentation from Jessica said to keep it in alignment with the comparables of Ipsy, Pittsfield, and Superior, as well as relative to median earnings of working Scio residents, is what she's looking for. And actually caught my thoughts, because we're actually thinking that when we're talking about hiring a director of operations, we're talking about a living wage for Scio Township. These are respectful parts of being a trusted member of our leaders of our township. So I agree, looking at what's happening, what Supervisor Carey is doing in the short term that we've had time to see, but we see the meeting schedules that are going up like crazy. We see about the growing community down at Baker and Scio, or Baker and Jackson. So I support what Commissioner Jackson said. I agree. I think we're out of touch with where we are right now. We need to make a reasonable adjustment. And if we start talking numbers, I'd be happy to chime in, but I think we need to do that.
I got caught up. It's been difficult to separate out the person doing the job. We have very qualified treasurers and clerk and their background and all the work that Supervisor Carey, and we have no input as to whether this should be a full-time position for the supervisor. So that kind of stops me there. It's difficult. I agree. The salary needs to be commensurate with what she's doing, but how do we get there? I did more work on the clerk and the treasurer. They seemed a little easier. Can we talk about that, or we're going to just continue on the supervisor right now?
I think we should focus on the super. I think that's where we have the biggest
So
issues.
when Commissioner Klubeck had given us some information last week and said we should increase by 56.
You have an addendum to that. Yeah, that was attached to the minutes. That was incorrect. That was from the information we had gotten earlier. We updated it once the talk brought us the currents. So it's within your minutes, and the current estimate
are at the bottom, and those are appropriate to the graph that was submitted to us is appropriate. And Aurora, you support this one. In the minutes.
Now, just to be clear, we're talking the document that at the top says compensation commission data.
Comparison, the newest one on the minute, and, yep, and yes, that's the right one, yeah. So the actual, there was an error on that because we weren't adjusting to the current salaries that have been going on, which we got as of, what, the clerk brought to us at the last presentation. So the difference there is actually the 44.4% would bring to the increases that were brought from 2016 to 25 in both the clerk and treasurer, and you see those percentages also.
Again, I'm confused because you said the current salary,
Right,
but because supervisor's current salary is 44,000.
right, so if you, right, and that's, if you go to this chart that Jessica brought,
Right.
it shows us down here 4/1/2024, and the supervisor was at 44,308. So, we did it in round numbers, 44,000, we did all of them in round numbers. So that brings that, it is at 18% versus the other two that have been brought, 44 and 43. So we're looking at, if you were to bring the same percentage up, it would bring the supervisor from all the way up to currently today.
But you're
Just
using
to
the
today.
36,000 from 2016.
Correct, and that's what everything has been
Okay.
based on, 2016. Am I explaining?
It was just that last piece that
Right.
I was missing. So,
Yep. And this new, what Jessica brought us was extremely helpful to bring us on. And that again, just brings us to our current percentages of increases.
Agree with that.
Okay, Commissioner Greenberg, do you have any,
I don't have anything to add. I appreciated Treasurer Maple's reminder that this is about the positions and not the people. My feeling from the last meeting is a lot of the information was presented as personal accomplishments rather than, and you know, in broad strokes, we want good people and we have good people, so let's figure out how we keep them.
That's a really, I mean, where's that quote from? That was a good one.
I think I got that.
You got it, I wonder.
I left out the discussion of personal accomplishments.
Yeah, no, I think that was good. That John-
Because we do want to base it on the position. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know about
As long as. I can speak
And-
again.
And to know that we're looking at facing this for almost 2 years.
Yeah, I'd like to donate 2 minutes of my time to the distinguished gentleman from across the table.
Oh, thank you. So, I also thought about, we talked a lot about percentages and what type of percentage adjustments are appropriate. It reminds me of something that happened way back when I was wet behind the ears as a sophomore engineer. And one of the young folks at our organization, I was young, but he was young. And he got promoted, and he got promoted significantly. And somehow or other, I got into a discussion with the HR manager about this. I wasn't mad or anything. It was somehow we were discussing salary increases and raises and things. And he said, "Oh yeah, John," it's not his real name. "Yeah, the increase that he should have gotten is too much." And I said, "Wait a minute." He said, "He's promoted to this position. Don't you just pay him what the position you consider the position is worth?" He said, "No, that increase was too much. So we couldn't give him the increase that, you know, another guy like that would have." And that kind of stuck with me. And I thought, you know, if you brought in somebody from the outside, if you brought in a CEO, and that CEO wanted a salary double of what the previous guy had, and you thought he was worth it, you'd pay him, wouldn't you? So to me, that always stuck in my craw as, look, let's pay what the position is worth. and let's not worry about percentage increases. If they've been underpaid in the past, okay, so be it. But let's pay market value now, what we think the position is worth, and not worry about percentages. I understand there may be some pushback because of the chaos, as somebody said. The supervisor's salary was doubled, and then it was cut, and then it was raised again, and somebody is going to say, well, why is our supervisor getting this big adjustment, assuming he said so? Well, why is he getting this big adjustment? Well, so what? It's what the market, it's what the market will bear.
Correct.
And if we consider that to be fair and reasonable compensation for supervisor, we just do it. Not worry about it.
Okay, I'll jump in here with another comment, and this relates to maybe the public perceptions and the marketplace value. When I think of a member of the public coming in and talking to somebody in our township here, I want a supervisor that represents the township well and is articulate and knowledgeable about the township, as well as a supervisor that is knowledgeable about the vendors and the employees in our township. And if you think of the current compensation, doesn't matter full-time or part-time, you can't go out and hire somebody with that skill set for 44,000 or 47,000. Yeah, or 52. Yeah. Now, certainly that position does not require a bachelor's degree in accounting or a master's degree in public policy or anything. I think totally valid comparisons, or not comparisons, but both the clerk and the treasurer pointed out that the financial responsibilities of those roles are at a higher level. So I don't think it is rational to think of our supervisor as having a $100,000 salary. I don't think those are or even a 95,000. I don't think that's the right range for that position. But I absolutely don't think 50,000 is either. So that's thinking of, like I say, a member of the public walking in here, as well as the communications and interactions with our own South Township employees and other, people here. That said, where do we want to start pinning that number down?
Can I make one
Well, we have
more
four
point?
numbers.
Yeah, but I think three of them are going to be heavily influenced by the CPI. Yeah, I think this is the one where we have to.
May I make one last point of what you just said, and I think it's really important as you were speaking at it's great info then. In order, and going back to old days of working in my old days of physicians and a medical environment, it took the team process, not just a physician, the practice manager, took the nursing staff, took the people that were checking in someone at the front. The money didn't come in order to pay and do, it was a team effort to produce a productive business. And we are a business, and we get wrapped up in sometimes I think forgetting that we are a business at Scio Township. We are here to serve the community. And so I see all three officers as well as the trustees as being, it takes everyone. And so I do agree with what you were saying, and I just want to say that if there isn't an ability to give that team look, I'm just determined to say we're trying to find a good, solid presentation of Scio Township. And I agree that the worth of the position, the market value, having all of these things that perhaps are different than the financial, but the financial doesn't work if people don't come and live here. And they don't get involved with supervisor tasks and whatnot. So I support 100% what both you and Commissioner Jackson said. It takes everyone, and we got to make sure that we
keeping good people on the full team. That's my 2 cents.
And my recommendation for the clerk and the treasurer is not the cost of living increase. So it's
Okay,
higher.
okay.
So I don't know if that will affect.
Numbers, how we doing?
Are we
We need a
ready
motion,
to
or what are we
sort of-
doing?
Are you ready to sort of like toss numbers out
Yeah.
and see what sticks?
I would say, at least for
Go
supervisor,
through
let's
supervisor.
just get through supervisor, and then we can come back to the other, all of them.
You want to
That
just pick a floor and start there?
I'll stick my neck out.
Go for it.
My thought walking here, and it has not changed a whole lot, it's a little bit. My band that I am comfortable discussing at the moment is a floor of 65K for the supervisor and a ceiling of 80K. I am willing to have my mind be changed, but that is my range at the moment.
Next in line, I put a great deal of thought into this, based it on looking at the bringing up to the 51, all of the discussion about changes in the position, the demand. I don't believe doubling it is something that is in the right choice at the moment. That would bring it up 104, even though we look at many of our, high appointments in the 100,000. I would like to put to the floor a suggestion of 77.5. Based on everything I've said for the last 2 months.
Okay,
I'll leave it at that.
all right.
40 days.
Yes, I'll-
Yeah. Commissioner, you're next on the,
I didn't come up with a range. I like the range idea because I got stuck on, if we present all of this to the board of trustees, they can mix everything and then do they just make their own decision? I don't understand what's happening.
Well, that's a good question. What happens if they don't take care of it?
Yeah,
The board of trustees can approve it. They can take no action, or they can reject your determination. To reject your determination, you have to do it by a 2/3 vote of the board. If they reject it, the salaries stay the same as they are.
And I just want to clarify, the range that I suggested is for discussion only. At the
Okay.
end of this meeting, I
We'll
want a
come up
number.
with it.
Yeah,
And
I think that sounds
Yes.
great, yeah.
so doing the math, I came up with 66,000. I didn't come up with a range.
Well, I have to admit that I believe that the should be higher. I was looking at the 44 and said as a floor, we should double it. Then I started thinking about it more in terms of what is this position to our township and how does it compare to the other townships? And even if you look, I mean, you can slice the data we have in many ways, use different dimensions to weed out, double salaries, make them full-time, and they're not really that salary, but you're using it for comparison. You can put all kinds of numbers, but the bottom line is the median position, median salary for that position based on the data that we got is somewhere around 1,000. Now, I agree, that's excessive for in relationship to the duties and responsibilities of some of those other townships charging for otherwise. So I think that, like, if I was looking at so for all of them, I was looking at the median of the data. In this case, the data that we were given seemed high. It was confirmed by Trustee Brandt and Treasurer Yapel that it is, because the job here doesn't you know, doesn't include as many of the responsibilities and contributions. Although there's exceptions to that on the other side as well. So you can purchase out the how you can purchase, whether you do different number names. I'm using the data we were given, with an acknowledgement that there are some changes that need to happen based on the actual data. So I came up with 90 over the
You, I'll pass.
I just stuck my neck out on the table. Gave everybody a sword.
But I think this is a good discussion and it is interesting in terms of the different rationale that everybody has. And I tell you what, I'm a little concerned in terms of the the future prospects with that position. And let me explain just a little bit, as this gets a little bit into our previous election. We had a person running for one of the open positions here that had not come to, like, I don't think of any of the Board of Trustees meetings, or maybe one or two, and didn't seem to have any, did have like an accounting background and some numbers background, but looking for a position that has a lot of responsibility related voting, right? So that's obviously it was somebody looking at the clerk position, right? And I just totally didn't understand how that individual would want to try and run for the clerk position with what they had on their resume, because that didn't seem to match here. They didn't seem to be remotely the qualifications that our clerk had, right? And I don't know what all the background for that was, but I know that seemed very. I really struggled with that. It's like I absolutely would not want to hire somebody or elect somebody as a clerk that didn't have more background both with our township and with the job responsibilities of a clerk, specifically, not just the financial, because like I say, there was some background there, but the responsibilities to manage the voting process here. Okay, so that's all just kind of in my mind. At the same time, now I think of this position, the supervisor position doesn't require a strong background in finance, right? Does not require a strong, background in business, or essentially it doesn't require a educational background really to speak of. It does. I mean, we would desire, and we've been talking about this, we desire somebody that has good communication. We desire somebody who has a passion for our township. We desire somebody that can learn and has an interest in township responsibilities. And our current supervisor mentioned a lot of classes that she's taken over the last couple of years. That to me is a very desirable interest, I would say, or passion. Now, where I'm getting to with that is that I wonder if we had, let's just say we had a $150,000 salary on that, would that be attracting people that were just in it for the money, as opposed to somebody that has the passion, the communication skills, and the interaction and background in the township?
Isn't that true about all the positions?
It's true, except that this one doesn't require, not including trustees now, because that doesn't require a lot of education either, but this one does not require the financial responsibility or the educational background that the clerk and the treasurer do. But
all the positions, there isn't a job requirement that, if you're applying to be the clerk,
yeah,
you don't have to you can't run unless you have a degree in this and
You're
an
right.
advanced degree in that. And we know that our current clerk has been doing a great job and has lots of qualifications. But there's people in the public that come in and see a name and think, oh yeah, I've heard that name. And they have no idea what that person's background is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really difficult to say, let's attract, you know,
Yeah.
a supervisor, clerk, treasurer, and then you just have to hope the public votes for that person because they're the most qualified. So I don't know how.
Can I make a point?
Absolutely.
One of the things that I remembered in conversation, with discussion of hiring the director of operations that's coming in, is there's a note in the minutes. And it kind of goes back, I think, to Jonathan, what you were bringing, and it says that they don't want to offer a salary with the salary be subordinate to the people they will be supervising that will be above their, salary range. So am I explaining that? That's what was.
That's that out, but I think we know what you're talking about.
Is they don't want to offer a DOD to come in and offer them $85,000 when they are supervising. Let's go down the list here. You know, 100,000, 120, you know, we can go down the list. And that's a reasonable, I think, thought for us to maybe help us a little bit with looking at these numbers, because there's market value to a position, and there's also how are we going to continue to recruit good people like we have right now and want to keep. People leave also, you know, it's not just keeping them, getting them, they leave. But I remember that conversation was by the board, the whole board talked about that when they were at the managers, and I know, am I explaining it the correct way, Laura, what they were talking? Yes, yeah. And so that's good to just keep in mind. Obviously, big jumps are difficult, and there's a history in this township of that. But we got to step up to the plate and try and do as best of a job as we can, I believe, in this position. Based on.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the median on the treasurer and the supervisor as well.
Yeah.
Make your issue on the data, but
Yeah.
it's the data we receive.
Right.
It's what we have to work with.
Right.
And I recommend, I guess, my salaries will probably all kind of make more sense together than just this one outlier. But I am looking at the numbers, and we're not that far off. We're 65 to 90 is our outside range.
Yeah.
Mr. Boyd, or I'm sorry, Chairman Boyd here refuses to comment the number. So we don't know.
We're looking for your number, John.
You know us the number, John. You
Well-
got it well, but you still know us the number.
Well,
You could just say it falls within the range.
yeah, well, it absolutely falls within the range. Yeah, there's no.
Okay, so what is it then?
I haven't determined it yet.
Oh,
Okay.
fair enough.
And
To Commissioner Fluger's point.
Yeah.
I understand the attitude. You want to be paid more than somebody you're overseeing. And I think that is true. The clerk is paid more than the deputy clerk. The treasurer is paid more than the deputy treasurer. Director of operations may be paid more than the supervisor, but the director of operations reports to the board, not the
correct.
supervisor. So the
whole board.
whole board of trustees.
No, I was referencing who that would be under the director of operations.
Yes, but your point being
Yes.
here, I agree with your point. For the supervisor salary we're looking at, it does not apply.
No, it was just the comparison of.
Yeah.
Other.
Nor, and
Yes,
Yeah, I know
yeah,
what you were saying.
that's what I'm
I think
trying
she was
to.
trying to say that there's other deputies
And if we're just
that are
looking
at
at,
65, 71. That's what we heard.
yeah,
And then if the supervisor were to hire a deputy in a 65 to 70 range, it would be embarrassing if we were paying the supervisor 50.
well, and also in 2022, the suggestion was approved for a 97,000 for a deputy supervisor. How in the world would you hire a deputy supervisor for?
Well, we did it with our
Yeah.
treasurer, so let's.
Yeah, it's all that. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. So, yeah, I was just. making that point.
yes,
Yeah.
a supervisor versus deputy supervisor, I agree with. I'll just say I am comfortable with the treasurer and the clerk being paid more than the supervisor because of their specialized knowledge. I'll also throw out here that the information we have been presented by the three officers, which was all excellent. And it's been great. Two of those positions are, as has been pointed out, they're very new. They're 3 months on the job. But what's more relevant to me is, yes, they're learning on the job, but also it's busy season for them. Tax season for the treasurer and budget season for the supervisor. My impression is that their workloads will gradually ease off. So over the course of the year, they're not going to be as frantic now then as they are now. So I'm adjusting the numbers in my head based on that impression. So feel free to contradict me, but that's what I think is happening. So that affects my range as well.
Okay, I actually would like to move away from this topic for just a minute and ask Commissioner Hurkott, you mentioned that the CPI wasn't what you had in mind for the treasurer and the clerk and the trustees. Can you give us a little bit more background?
Yeah,
on that?
I don't know if you noticed, but when I put together the, it was interesting, these townships, the treasurer and the clerk got paid exactly the same. So if we make one decision, we might have the answer for the other position, but I looked at the percentage increases for the clerk, I went with our clerk, and then, so it went up 6.7%, 8.4%, 30%, and then held steady, and then up to 84K, 18% increase, and to the present 99,403. Our clerk gave us the current median range for IPSI, Pittsfield, Scio, Superior. The determination, well, it's all written here, 2023 and then 2025 salaries. And another graph, the median earnings of the candidate pool went up to 123.5. So that was a significant jump. So I went from 99,403, went to the 109 that you showed us. That's a 9.7% increase. So I thought we'll just round off, recommend 10% increase. She would go up to 109,343 for 2025. I don't know if it's making a lot of sense, but
For which position?
I'm sorry,
You talk about the clerk?
the clerk.
And what was your recommendation?
10% increase, so she would go up to 109,343. And then on this, I figured out that, well, the clerk and treasurer across the board paid the same, except Hamburg, their treasurer is part-time. The supervisors paid about 5 to 6% more than the clerk and the treasurer. But those are all full-time positions.
Yeah.
And one part-time supervisor is, Southfield. I just found it really interesting that the clerk and treasurer across the board, every township is paid exactly the same. And ours, they're not that far off, but they are different. Why is that? Why is it that they choose to pay all their clerk and treasurer the same? I don't know. But my recommendation was 10% for the clerk, and then same logic, 10% for the treasurer or bring the treasurer up to exec paid as the clerk, so they would match.
I don't know why they've chosen to equalize it. It may be their duties, it may be their perception, and they said it's make it easy. I don't know that we really need to know the answer. They're close. They're equal or they're close. My personal preference, again, sticking my neck out here, my personal thought is that the clerk has more responsibilities than the treasurer does and has a greater workload. So I am comfortable with the clerk being paid more than the treasurer for this township.
And, yeah, I just brought it up, but again, when you're looking for new people, when the treasurer leaves and they can find somebody else, there might be questions. Well, every other township that I looked into gets paid the exact same amount as the clerk, and why are you different? And I'm responsible for all the taxes. I think our present treasurer is going to bring us into the 21st century and bring in revenue, correct errors, and all of that is worth some dollars too. I'm sure doing most of the past 20 or 30 years on paper, there had to be a lot more errors. And we're going to clean that all up and improve it and make it better for every citizen, every resident, easier to pay your taxes, or this is how you find out all your information online. So that was my recommendation for the clerk, and then we can talk about the treasurer commissioner action.
Do we just settle on a number for the supervisor first?
Yeah, so we can go back to that.
Well, there's no specific requirement that we settle on one.
Just wonder if we wanted to close that agenda item before moving on, or we can discuss all three. I'm going to either way.
Well, actually, what are y'all thinking in terms of the trustee position?
I'll stick my neck out at CPI. I looked at the, it's based on the fact that we're already at so the median is 7,538. And we're at, there's only two, White Lake Township and Ypsilanti Township, where they're significantly higher. But we're right in the middle now. I mean, I think CPI is appropriate, even maybe a little boost, but we're above the median, and that's generally where I was trying to target when I looked.
Good recommendation, Jonathan. One thing I thought we might think about with regarding trustees is the fact that we seem to be seeing like really high, and we're not going to get to this in this voting time, but we're seeing, obviously all of us know, a higher influx of attendance to meetings, committee meetings. I just thought, in the sense that we're unable to address that the board asked us to address committee meetings, we're not going to do that. But I personally think I would go with the recommendation of the 5%. That just gives a little bit to say we support you, we're moving in a positive direction. That would be my recommendation. That a little bit to say, we basically didn't get to discuss committee requirements for anyone, and just really they are elected officials, and I would like to recommend 5%.
Sorry, just from the
To
note
the in order to accommodate that we were unable to address the request that came from the board for us to consider compensation on the committee meetings. I think that's exactly what I'm
right.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking to, and that's what I feel is that we weren't able to, because we got so many broad changes in this particular timeline here, that maybe we could just do a little farther bump. I would like to suggest 5%.
5% then CPI, or just a total?
Yeah, I'm just saying a total of 5%.
totally reasonable. I
It's
like
just,
the idea. of the
it's
way you're
just
saying
a
things.
little bit saying,
Yeah.
we didn't get to everything,
No,
I'd like to see 5%.
I support that. I will change my recommendation to 5%.
I'm fine with that.
Right? It's not-
Did we just finish a category?
Well, we might have.
Jeff has
We
it.
need a couple
Jeff's
more.
not-
We need more yeses.
Jeff and John, if not yet.
Frankly, I'm fine with leaving it at 10. I think it's reasonable compensation. I don't see a need for CPI because you show up for a few meetings a year. I know it's a lot. It's 24 meetings. That's a lot. They do go late.
Yeah.
But I believe that based on the ranges of trustee salaries, that ours is appropriate for the time. That's where I am.
Historically, have they gotten CPI or just done these jumps?
Yeah. Well, I think it is, comfortable for me to do the CPI, the 3%. However, I think it's a kind of a valid argument, maybe not a great argument, but the 5% I also would see as reasonable. And let me ask you this. You personally, could you be comfortable with the 5%? If that was, if
I don't believe it's necessary, but I will not object to it.
$500 versus 3.
500, so 10,500 would be the salary.
So it sounds like we actually have a potential agreement there.
What is the potential to?
5% increase for trustees. The that kind of, to me, it kind of lines up with respecting their time, respecting their interest and background with the township to be able to make the decisions that govern our township. At the same time, it's not like we're just throwing money at them like they do in Washington. So, you know, little
So you got
federal government humor there. So you got being audited. Is that what you're saying? No.
Yeah.
So we can either make a motion on that, and he's looking excited. You see the look on his face? He's saying, "Oh, they actually going to make a decision on something?"
Can I ask 2 questions?
Oh, sure.
Is it your intention? Maybe you talked about this before I got here. I apologize. I was stuck in court. One of my associates came in and said, "I'll take that last case." And so I got here. Is it your intention to meet Friday?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And
On the board, yeah.
so if you are going to meet Friday, with these, you could reach consensus and we show up with the 4 resolutions on Friday. And the only thing that needs to be filled in is who moves it, who seconds it, and you can adopt them. And you can also do that today if you want, and then we can either get them printed today, whichever ones you settle for, or we could do it Friday.
So I'm not sure. I'd like to go for another half hour at least here. So I'm not sure how much progress we'll make. But if we come to agreement on the other 3, then I wouldn't mind not having a meeting on Friday. But
You'll need to sign the resolutions tonight, so as long as you have the ability to do that. But someone needs to, and of course, you all have the resolutions, so
That need fixing.
let me just be more direct and clear. For each one of these positions, you'll need a motion to adopt, a motion to set it, or a motion to adopt the resolution, and a second and a vote, and then you'll have that one done.
Okay.
And then you sign the resolutions.
yeah. Okay, so I mentioned that I'm comfortable staying for at least another 30 minutes. Is that so? I'd like to kind of move forward on a discussion of the other 3 positions before we worry about actually doing the resolution. And yeah, it's funny because we do have very different
Well, let's back into it. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about split. Somebody threw out, Commissioner Hurd threw out 109.
And it's 10%, 10%, so it'd be 109, 343.
Now, is that pre or post? Does that include CPI after, or that's part of that 10%, flat 10%, no CPI? Okay. Very good.
And that brings her to the kind of the main.
And then going back to the rationale, it was the other, townships that we were looking at.
Yeah, Sal's township, the largest townships in Washington County. And then she had also talked about the median earnings for candidates with graduate professional degrees.
What is the median?
Well, the median that she had presented was 123,594, 123,000. But if we
look at the data we were given, the highest clerk was 108,435.
Correct. Yes, this is the projected
And I agree that
2025.
that's the highest. The median was 99,400 of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 data points.
And White Lake is almost double, more, almost double.
31,000.
Yeah.
And the second highest is Pittsfield Township at 103,648.
And they're a charter, they have more staff.
Yeah.
Clerk in Chelsea is 101, and then South Township. There's 3 over that.
And we do have that.
It's a plus of about 1%.
No, I'm with you.
So when I was, so I looked at the median and said, yeah, that's not enough. Our clerk is significantly more, driven into station. Responsibilities are higher. I came out at, call it 105, 162.
Well, 6% basically.
It was an adjustment to the median plus 3%.
Yeah, 6.1%.
Yeah, absolutely 6.1.
Actually, you pretty much hit my number on that, so I'll join you on that one.
All right.
That's 105.
105, 162. Yeah. 105 looks like we're doing
Looks like we're being lazy to just.
Yeah, you gotta put extra significant numbers on it.
24/7.
You're a software engineer, you know.
I have written proposals and reviewed a whole lot of them, and that was one of the tricks. You don't say this is a $500,000 proposal, you say it's 518, 360.
Absolutely, Scott, these guys are on it, they know exactly how much it's gonna
You got to figure it out.
cost. Right?
Good morning.
I have to tell you, I wish we had come to an understanding of what we were going to do with regards to supervisor before we moved down. I'm struggling a bit with coming up with this, to be very honest with you.
We don't have to determine this now.
I know.
So,
I just, we're looking at percentages on these people, and I think we're looking at fair percentages and making sure we let people know that we,
not only appreciate, but respect their work and their position. I'm really, at this point in time, if everything was equal and just, I would say 6.1 was a reasonable percentage. I just have concerns on how we're going to make our big number of jobs that we have to do. We haven't really gotten close. We got a big leeway between 65 and 90,000. So I just need to be honest and say, I'd like to just keep going. I'll hear what people have to say. I think, this 6.1 sounds reasonable. I hope we can be as reasonable when we're looking at the other position.
Okay, I think I got that.
Meaning the supervisor, which we have a spread right now
Yeah,
between 5,000 to 90.
But,
We're not looking at percentages with that position.
right,
We're only looking, that's a like, let's throw a ball in the air type thing and figure out what we can come up with. Everything else we're doing it basically on probably how we would have done if we weren't looking at a major change that got kind of left in our laps.
Do we give a presentation to the board to justify a number?
yeah, if they want to know, they have to suffer through all the videos, I guess.
They can do
Yeah.
that.
They can go back and everything. Yeah, I mean, as I say, I think 6.1, I would agree with what you're saying. I just have a concern how we're gonna figure this out.
I think that all of us move down to the clerk because we're all struggling.
Yeah, so let's do the easy ones first.
Okay.
What do you think, Wise?
So, so in Clerk Flintoff's, notes that we all had, I just wanted to go back and read her recommendation.
Yeah, I mentioned that already. Yeah.
Oh, that's what we were talking about, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's highlighted in yellow if you look at my.
Okay.
Oh, cool, see, we get it done over here.
Yeah, all right. I'm aware of it as well. All right, so this is what I was referring to up here.
Oh, yeah, I read that.
Yeah, that was it in her cover page.
Presentation.
She says, I recommend salary township code be raised slightly to keep it in alignment with comparable Ypsilanti, Pittsfield, Superior townships, as well as relative to median earnings of working Scio residents. And
It's well spoken. I thought that was well spoken.
yeah, and I think the 6.1 would fit what she was looking for there, or what, I'm sorry, what her recommendation was there. And I think that also is a high enough compensation that if she's not here, we can attract her with skills.
Well, hopefully, her level of skills, because whether it is elsewhere, it has become, and is the critical role in this township. So obviously, we want somebody at the highest level that we can get.
It's hard to,
So we have a consensus, I think.
Ooh, all right.
the clerk.
Clerk. So whatever that number is. 105, 162 is.
Something like that.
I'm actually more comfortable with only 4 significant digits. So I would say 105, 200
That's fine.
would be my
What did you say?
105.
105, 200.
Yeah.
Get some quiet, you know, get me back here.
Pleasure. Yes.
We are.
So that helps.
I'm sorry.
So he's at 90 currently.
We can mess up that mission.
Yeah, that's a median on the local. I'll make a suggestion, since we keep talking about equal with, most of the townships. Commissioner Hergat brought up that similar, pay ranges for both. Is it reasonable to look at, they both have a high level of financial responsibility, and there's a huge change in a new treasurer coming in? Are we looking at a similar percentage?
I'm not quite following the huge.
Are you saying match her
Well,
salary?
yes, that we
or
get a 6.1, I'm
6.1,
talking
yeah.
percentages. I'm
Okay.
looking at percentages. Anybody else jump in? I'm just saying, it's kind of like when you take every employee and give them a COLA, you don't evaluate every person. So I just,
Well, we
sense,
know the clerk's responsibilities are increasing because of the increasing length and complexity of elections. We know about that.
Yes.
Is there a commensurate increase? I understand Treasury April has big plans on a level.
well, our population's going up,
Population's going up.
and we have increased, projects for new residents on the books. So he is going to, and he is also making changes that ultimately, in my opinion, what I see is he's making changes to make our township more, user friendly and bring people in that see easier ways. I saw someone kicking the front door at 5:15 last week because they couldn't get in to pay probably taxes. He's working on making things easier for people. It's a positive environment for the township. That's how I look at, and also he's looking at, changes from the number of accounts that are fairly, and I don't have the exact number. Can you help me with that, Aurora?
He did mention it. It
He
was a
mentioned it, it's a
significant.
significant number that
Oh,
are
yeah,
out there.
27.
Floating around there right now.
But in all of his improvements, I
Yeah.
can't even begin to tell you how glad I am to have Raiden on
Oh.
for a minute. No, I'm
Yeah.
just joking on it. I'm looking at the numbers. Again, the median is 99
Yeah.
for the data that we were given.
All right, I'll throw in something from the other side here for a minute. In theory, the increased automation that Treasurer Yapel hopes to introduce should make the treasurer position a little bit easier.
I will challenge that.
Okay,
I'll challenge that because what happens, what I've seen happen is that when you automate, when you increase the work process workflow, the people don't do less work, they do more valuable work.
what would that be in his role? What
In
do you-
his
what do you
role,
think?
once he gets the payments automated and flowing easier, so that his staff isn't spending all the time. Like, for example, he was talking about, being able to take their own checks and not having to go to the bank and all that kind of stuff. That saves hours of time. Those kinds of improvements allows his staff to do other work that, from what I hear, there's backlogs of paperwork downstairs that needs to be dealt with. There's all kinds of stuff that we would like, we're aspirational, but we can't do because we don't have enough time or enough staff. So from my perspective, yes, you can automate it, but those systems need maintenance. So you end up spending more time anyhow. It doesn't all go away. You have different type of work, less, but different. And also sorry, go ahead. You're software engineer. No, please go ahead. I'm going.
I'll do a +1 on that because coming from a software background, worked in high tech my entire career. And when I had tasks to do and I automated them, that freed me up to do the more value added work. There is such a thing as spending all your time doing grunt work and it gets old. You need to do the creative work, the kind that brings in more revenue. So yes, automation will free him up, but it'll free him up from tasks that he shouldn't really have to do in the 21st century. And he did mention several things he wants the treasurer's role to do, spending more time on planning and being more efficient and reducing mistakes. So I would say it's lovely to say automation is going to make our life easier. I've been automating for 40 years. Explain to me how my life is easier.
I agree. I fully agree. Okay. It creates new challenges where the work that you do when you solve those problems is more valuable than the grunt work. So, and the other thing is, anytime you go for an automation, it's a huge project, it blows up. And yes, you're right, that initial blow up of work that needs to be, the discovery phase, all the different research and the development. As you go through that phase, there's a huge amount of work up front, and then that tapers off. Then it frees you up to do some other big pile of work. And I don't see that in the next 4 years.
Well, okay, and the thing is, I see the responsibilities of the clerk over the, say, a 10-year period increasing more significantly because of voting responsibilities. Then I see the position of the treasurer increasing. Right? And that's, I will maintain that argument now. Obviously, there are other things involved in setting the actual number. But I will still argue that position.
No, I agree with you that the second part. For sure.
And the clerk is being paid more.
I do think also we need to realize we're making some pretty major changes in the Treasury Department from what we've had in the last 10 years. In, compromising accounts, changes in how we're doing things. He's being very advantageous to residents with questions. This is a whole different type of treasurer. So I do want to, at least when I look at, if I only look at what's going to happen over 2 years, I see this as we're in a changing atmosphere of a new person coming in, making changes, not only as both of you gentlemen were speaking of, but also just in the general consensus of how a treasurer is going to perform in Scio Township.
In other words, you think the expectations.
I think, I think that, and I believe that he has every intent to continue to bring the best to Scio that way. I do.
Okay, the tricky part for me there is there's no guarantee the treasurer who follows him will have the same attitude or the same mission.
Right.
If we can take some of what's the changes being made and they become, let's say, ordinance duties, yes, no issues there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you sets out the duties of the treasurer, the ordinance can say whatever it wants, but the statute controls.
Okay, I don't know how much, I guess the board of trustees can set the statutory duties. I guess I was saying.
No, the state legislature.
The state legislature. They can, but the board of trustees can assign the treasurer additional responsibilities through ordinances.
They can do whatever they want, and so
Yes.
is the treasurer.
Yes, so I guess my point is.
My point is, no, so what.
If it becomes codified.
I hate to say no to a township official, but the idea of codifying this by ordinance will not be effective.
Okay.
I'm still learning stuff. This is just so much fun. Well, all right. So let's get back then. There was kind of a proposal. It sounds like you two gentlemen are simpatico with.
And I support what they're saying.
Okay.
I'm agreeing with what they're saying. And it's not, I'm just explaining that it's not just in new upgraded data. There's more to the position that's changing from what we had a treasurer for years that no one even was able to access. So I'm just saying, if I have to pull out the statutory reference something, I'm just saying we have a current person who's attempting to really complete the statutory duties in a current and updated fashion. And those duties, and with that change, and including records that are in the basement that need to be scanned and everything, this is a big change, I believe, in the position. So, even with doing it, the statutories are there, doesn't mean they always got done, or they will. And we have no idea who might come in and how they might complete the position. We're looking at the position right now.
Are we okay with the same doing the 6.1?
All right. So my only hesitation with that is you expressed concern about identifying these three before we came to an agreement on supervisor.
I'm trying to work on this, and
Do you want us to go back to the supervisor first
what?
before we
I
make a decision on a
I am
treasurer?
trusting in the committee I have worked with that they will have as fair and just conversation when we make our final determination about this position that will be the last one.
Okay,
And so I'm willing to say at this point, I'm doing, as I told myself earlier, I came in, sorry, I dropped my pen. I'm determined to bring in good faith a fair decision to my vote. So
okay,
I'm determined today to say I agree with what they have brought.
okay,
And
yeah,
we'll move on.
I'll agree with that too, so I think we have
I
another
think we have another.
decision,
Yeah.
so that means we're back to,
Could you repeat what that one was?
The treasurer. To do the same percentage. increase,
Yeah.
6.1.
What's the number?
So the new
Somebody
number,
run it.
so 95, 400, yeah,
What is it?
95, 490.
Does everyone agree that that's what you're saying?
Let's make it 5.
Yep.
500.
But do we want to give numbers or we want to give them,
Well, we're doing
give a
both.
number.
okay.
We're doing both. We need to provide a number.
The resolution, okay.
Yeah,
So 95, 500.
we have to give a number according to the previous resolution.
yes, so we're good.
We're good.
All right, back to the supervisor discussion. And,
No. I was gonna say, we take a 5-minute break, but that would just be one of the.
well, we don't have to stop.
Yeah.
at
I can
6.
keep going, but I
I can
could
be
really
here
use
till
it.
6:30. It's the best, maybe 6:40. Gotta be somewhere important at 7.
How are you doing on time?
I'm fine.
Okay.
We can take a
I'm
break.
fine with 5 minutes.
Yeah, let's adjourn for 5 minutes and come back at 6. Let's see what we can.
No one here.
I think there is one restroom.
Well, there's phone.
Let me see, I'm gonna turn the recording off here. Oh, no. Pause, yeah.
You won't laugh.
95.5 or anything else.
We have the treasurer's fund. Yeah, that's, the clerk is, the current salary is 99,403. And my notes say 6.1% increase,
Mhm.
which will bring it up to 105,467, and rounding it up.
105.5.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're saying 105.5?
That's, we rounded it up, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had it as 105.2, but if it's 105.5, that's what it is.
All right, so we're ready to jump back into supervisor. So, we have, interesting thing, we seem to come to an agreement that there should be a significant increment, this year. And we have looked at a variety of different data. We have some variety of numbers sitting in front of us, and to see if we can maybe get a better handle on a tighter range. Jonathan, you able to talk to us now, or?
Yeah.
I see you typing there. It looks like.
No, I'm just doing some math, but no, I'm listening.
Got a spreadsheet here is gonna, well, so you actually were on one extreme with 90,000.
Yeah.
Would you be comfortable if we ended up in the 80,000?
Oh, sure, yeah, yeah, no,
Okay,
again, my methodology was consistent between all three.
okay. Well, now you just said that, but then you also said that you were okay, being more toward the 80,000.
Well, I'm a member of the committee, I'm not gonna be.
Okay, all right, well, so then.
I'm willing to listen and understand why.
Yeah.
If the average salary of the person living in Scio Township was 77. I don't know.
Well, what's that make you think? Where are you going with that?
Just another data point.
Oh, okay, all right. So, Commissioner Haggett, you were at the low end, I think, with 66. Would you be comfortable?
Because I was thinking this is part-time, and if you double it, and the same with the average salary of someone in South Township, 77,000, whatever. That's a full-time position.
Yeah.
So that's what I get stuck on. And if we can increase their salary to 70,000, 80,000, I'm fine with that if you feel confident. I just wonder if the board is gonna say nope, and nothing happens.
Well,
To
It's
do
not
our
our
job,
concern.
yeah, we have. to-
I mean, I'm with you on that, but
Yeah,
it can't influence our
Determination.
so. So,
Yeah.
Ordered written down.
yeah, so with that in mind, we've kind of narrowed it to maybe from 77.5 to, I'm sorry, that isn't correct, from,
Well, at that point,
Yeah.
if we had eliminated the low of the 66, which might be a way to then begin to talk about, sorry, it's getting late, I just want to say, Joe, was between 65 and 80. Okay, so if we could get at a closer range, maybe, can we do that? Would we begin to feel that a choice of somewhere in the middle, which would bring us in the 80s, is that a place that we can start to talk about?
It's comfortable for me. I'm thinking, again, with the average salary, 77.5. And if we, based on the information I've been presented with, the evidence that I have, the supervisor role is something that you might have a side gig, but you're not going to have a 40-hour week job in addition to supervisor and do the job. That's
I agree with that.
what I'm thinking.
Right, right.
So a salary of the supervisor should be commensurate with, that's going to take the vast majority of someone's working from.
Right, a living
During the
wage
week.
for someone for a
Yes.
position. Right.
So I am okay with at least, I'm going to revise my range. And I'm saying in the neighborhood of 77, somewhere in that ballpark is fine.
After hearing presentation, I will just say, after hearing presentation by several others, and at least making note that there's no one sitting at this table right now that doesn't perhaps think that based on information we got, that things have been out of whack for several years. I'll leave it at that. So I personally, we had talked before about doing it in 2 stages, all that, we're not doing that. But if I personally was thinking of it in the 2-stage, I would, say, well, yes, it should have been all along the 77.5 and give a 6.1% increase, which would bring us up roughly to an 80. That's where my head is going, because we did talk last time about a 2-step, and I think we've decided that's unnecessary to do. And so, but in my mind, I had been coming in thinking we were looking at getting back on track, looking at the position, everything we've talked about, and then we've been giving everybody who already was in their appropriate areas a 6.1.
Okay, a couple of clarifying questions. First off, to Commissioner Jackson, you had used the number 77.5 as, but I didn't catch, was that referencing our earlier discussion on average income Scio Township, or was that, because that happened to be the same number that Commissioner Klubeck originally suggested as.
It was based on the average.
Okay, all right. And then, I forgot what my other question was for you, but
6.1 would, just for clarification, if we thought in terms this way, just my presentation and then I'll stop. If we added a 6.1 as we're doing with the others, we would come to 82.5 for the supervisor position.
I have 82, 227.
I think we just rounded.
Run it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna run everybody else that way. So that's my presentation of what I'd like to see us hopefully. I do believe that determining this rather large changes and descriptions and learning from legal and all sorts of things,
I'd like to, have us take a serious look at the 82.5. And that's lower than some, higher than others, but perhaps we could come to some thoughts on that. Commissioner Herbert?
Yeah.
And again, that had a lot to do with looking at other, all the facts we've had, the other areas, that brings me to all of that. With no discussion of how many hours somebody's in the building.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
No, and we do not have a deputy supervisor, please keep that in mind.
Quite frankly, if the supervisor's gonna be here working 30 hours a week or 25 hours a week, I personally would like to know that some of that time is spent up front, welcoming people that come into the township and all. So, there's, maybe those things aren't described by the statute, treasurer.
They're actually,
Do the same thing for the other
and actually,
agencies.
that's what Ryan spoke about too.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that from our supervisor. I mean, actually, what was I gonna say? History doesn't always present that. And so I'm seeing changes, and I think that that's great. We gotta have people here if we're gonna have residents be able to feel comfortable and get the job done.
You know, if I am a Scio resident, and I come in and get greeted by the supervisor several times that I stop in, I'm thinking, why isn't the supervisor back there working? When we have, you know, Fran or other people at the front desk to greet you, answer questions, let me go get the supervisor, she can come up and answer that, or the treasurer, not necessarily spending time.
Okay, not necessarily, okay,
Yeah.
I was just
Maybe
one
that's what you're thinking.
category of work, there's probably others as well, where I think the whole idea of it being.
In the building is, I think, what we're talking more. Yeah.
It's the same reason why, Ari comes over and gives you your french fries at, the Roadhouse. Yeah, because that's how fancy places do it. I don't know. I'm not there at the other one.
Well, I think when I'm at Taco Bell, I don't normally have.
No,
it doesn't. Never mind.
Getting away.
You're not paying $25 for French fries.
Okay. So, where are you on this discussion now?
I'm still stuck on
So I threw a number out. Did we find out if anybody agrees
that. I like
with
that,
that number?
if everybody's thinking 775 is the.
Jonathan is thinking he
Yeah.
could go the 82.5.
Hold on a second,
Okay.
I thought we were talking 77.5.
We're talking 77.5 is the median income for Scio Township.
Okay.
So if we just assume that was her salary, and we give her a 6.1%
Right.
bump, like we gave to the
Everybody
treasurer and the clerk, that will take her up to 82.5.
And I'm good with that number as well.
It sounds like there are at least 4 people at the table that are comfortable with maybe.
John, are you comfortable with that number?
If
Are you I didn't know if you were the fourth. I'm not sure who the fourth was. I think 3 of us were. I was waiting to see.
I would have targeted a little less than that, but I was comfortable with the 77.5 kind of thing. But I understand the rationalization in terms of, and that was prior to us discussing what the average incomes are in South Township. But if 4 of us are comfortable at 82.5, then I guess I'm comfortable with that too, so.
Yeah, I just don't, I'm still
Well, you can vote
struggling.
no.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I want, yeah.
Tell them.
Yeah, because if they get this piece of paper with our recommendation,
Determination.
the determination. And they don't have our reason behind it. And they're thinking this is a part-time position.
and we, 2 years down the road, make it into a full-time, does that mean we double their salary? Now they're making more than
I
60?
thought
I think you're doing that now.
the supervisor said that the board recognized this.
Yeah, it's been.
Well,
But nevertheless,
yeah.
can we, I'll ask the attorney, Attorney Fink, can we put something in the resolution that explains our rationale, succinctly, for the salary term?
You can,
Whereas the duties, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
you can, and, I'll point out two things. One, you have two members of the board here now who have heard your rationale. And you have, as you've been discussing for the last 2 hours, very engaged board members who, the ones who aren't here, are going to either look at the video that Mr. Pattinson puts up or something. And the other is that if you want to do that, you are going to either stay late tonight or have a meeting on Friday. Because crafting that language will take more time than just adopting the number. And I don't mean to say that in a way that you can't do it or that I'm saying you shouldn't. I'm just pointing out the reality that in the end, what the board is going to do is either accept, take no action, or reject the determination of the school commission.
That is the way of politics.
What's the result of the
Everything stays the same. Well, each one that they take no action on stays the same, which is part of having 4 separate resolutions.
Okay, with that in mind,
We're talking true, that we have 2 board members here that heard all of this.
Yeah.
And like you said, they can all watch the videos. Right. So they understand we didn't pull this number. Work hard at that.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I agree. There's a couple of things that we've done to get to these numbers. We've looked at the median of the data we've been given. We've discussed the history of the roles. We've discussed the reasoning why we want good service here, why we pay for good quality folks. Maybe you don't always get a good quality person when you pay a lot, but you generally don't get them if you don't pay a lot. So it's always a crapshoot. The best thing we can do to give Scio Township the type of leadership that we want, I think, is to come up on these salaries a little bit. And it's not like we're not being ridiculously, we're not throwing money around. We have a very good rationale based on the numbers, based on the unions, based on the duties, and kind of just the meeting load. I mean, that was what really convinced me that the supervisory role is a full-time role. Like, if you have 10 to 12 hours of meetings a week, and you know, you're not getting work done during that time. So we have 8, 10 hours to work. It makes sense to me based on what it's become. It's a full-time role. As is all these roles. And how are we going to hire? Like, to your point, how are we going to find good people if we're saying it pays real well, but only half the time? You know, we've only got 20 hours a week. So we're not going to be able to find it. I don't believe we're about this time.
I agree 100%. Make sure we have the good people we have here and help us grow and work together and we'll bring Scio Township to the future we want.
okay, I want to
Want me to
jump
wave the flag?
in. So you earlier said that your comfortable number was, I guess initially you said maybe 66, and then you said 70 was still well within comfort zone, or I don't remember the words you used. And so obviously 82.5 is a little higher than what you're comfortable with. What number?
Well, again, it's in my mind, that part-time and all of that, but this discussion,
Yeah.
I feel much more comfortable that, and I really want to pay people to retain them and to do the work and do a good job and reward them. And the median, this is good information, median salary is 775.
Well, I guess I'm not completely. Would you be more comfortable at, say, 78 than at 82.5?
How much?
At 78 as opposed to 82.5.
I'm fine with 82.5.
Okay, all right, that's what I was wondering where you were on that continuum.
And we went through the whole thing, 77.5, giving me 6.1%, 82. I'm fine with that, 82.
Okay, well, I think that we're at an agreement point on that also then. Because that was my favorite number, but I think it's an incredible number. So, with that in mind,
Or I am sometimes an optimist. And
You
so
send her out.
I have already transmitted the resolutions with the typos fixed and those numbers plugged in based on the conversation. And Aurora is going and printing them and is going to bring in 6 copies so that you can all look at them, fill in the blanks for who moved, who seconded, who voted aye, who voted nay, and if I've done this right, and of course, we can correct any minor things by hand. You can sign these tonight, you'll be done.
that would
If
be,
that's what you want.
that would be pretty good, yeah.
My waiting pencil.
I blocked off Happy Friday.
Oh, good.
I'm really excited.
Fine, I'm thinking about what's gonna change.
Yeah, okay.
Nothing says we can't. We can formally hold.
Let me get back, we gotta do something, yeah.
All right, so, there's been a request from the public that we actually have our second public comment before we, sign the.
Yeah,
document.
Okay. No, I
And,
disagree with that.
We,
I want to know where you guys land before we-
I mean, I assume,
Did you want me to send you the numbers of where we were?
No, I would like you to follow the agenda that you adopted.
I'm sorry, what did you want?
I believe there was just a request to move public comment up
yeah,
in the discussion, and I respectfully ask that you follow the agenda.
yeah, so she's asking us to actually, make a motion.
Before we have public comment. Correct? Is that, am I understanding right?
What's I'm just curious why.
It's dependent on your determination.
The comments would be dependent on.
That's the way public comment is intended.
Okay, fair enough, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't get that at first, Captain. Thank you. Makes sense.
Okay, so.
And, depending on public, 7 seats.
Yes,
Drop.
yeah, we're doing that before,
And then the public comment.
and then we adjourn.
Say,
Oh, and because
Yeah.
you won't meet on Friday, you should amend your agenda to include setting the first meeting of 2027,
Oh, yeah.
which, it can always be changed, but that way everybody knows. And I
Yeah.
think your first meeting in 2025 was the first Friday of January. And then
I'm really glad you brought that up, so.
First Friday in January. That's a huge deal.
Okay. That'll be a short meeting. But when you get to that, when you're done with this current business, you could set a meeting for Friday, January 8th.
Okay. So, Attorney Fink, can we go ahead and make motions on these, or we actually have the things to sign, or what's the?
Well, this is coming.
Questions moved. As I said, Mr. Chairman, you can, the one you sign will be the official version, and any typos or corrections or changes you can make by hand, and you'll see there are, as I mentioned, including at least one of them I didn't get the February 19th, the clerk's one, but you can put that in on the bottom. So once everyone looks at it, someone can move it and someone can second it. We are numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Resolution
So
25.04.
you have to take them in order.
Yeah.
Number one is
Trustees. At the top, it has,
oh, right there.
resolution
I see.
25-01.
Yeah, I think so. I just need to get some reading this real quickly. Okay.
Ready? I'd like to make a, excuse me, a motion to adopt the resolution, 25-01. Resolution for determination salaries for township trustees.
And I'll second that. Any further discussion? All right, let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the resolution 25-02, determination of township treasurer.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion, no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I just noticed that the document says it's a roll call vote. If you strike the roll call, well, it's not required by, well, I should check the statute.
We can do a roll call quickly.
Or you can do a roll call quickly, but you're gonna have to number 01.
Okay, let's go back to,
You can just take a roll, you don't have to, nobody has to move it again, you can just vote it again.
okay, Commissioner Boyd, yay, Commissioner Greenberg.
Yay.
Commissioner Hergott,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Klubeck.
Yes.
Okay, for resolution 25-2, roll call, Commissioner Boyd, yes. Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Hergott,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Klubeck.
Yes.
Okay, we're now township clerk.
I'll make some.
Everybody gets it.
Everybody gets paid. I got full right enough first. I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution that should read 2503 at the top, correct, Jennifer?
Yes. There we go.
Yes. As amended. I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution 2503 to set the new salary of the township clerk.
I'll second that.
Nobody's.
Okay,
That's a,
I second.
you second?
Second. Yeah.
okay, further discussion? All right, so roll call, Commissioner Boyd, yay. Commissioner Greenberg.
Yay.
Commissioner Hergott.
Yeah.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Klubeck.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
I would like to make a motion to adopt resolution 25-04, determine salary for township supervisor.
I'd like to, oh, sorry.
Okay. All right. Okay, any further discussion? All right, following roll, Commissioner Boyd, yes. Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Herga.
Yeah.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Klubeck.
Yeah.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, so now.
Make a meeting, did you make a meeting date?
Amend the agenda for the next meeting. Did we amend the agenda for the next meeting?
You just do that. I'd like to make a motion, we amend the agenda to add the first meeting of 2027,
January 8th.
And we'll continue on Friday.
And I'll second that. 2 p.m. Yes, that's what I'll second. Okay, further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, so next up we have our public comment. And we'll open that up first to the public in the room. Do you want to sit here so on the camera?
Rob Pattinson, Scio Township resident. Thank you all for this committee. Well done. During the discussions tonight, you went into a lot of detail about offering 6.1% increases to the 3 officers, but you made it 5% for the trustees. And so would you want to change the trustees to 6.1%? Or would you want to provide the trustees with an explanation of why they're getting 5% compared to 6.1%?
I'm happy to take that. I think the numbers, the median numbers show that we're already above the median. And whereas others weren't. Now, we can argue with the data we have at our disposal, but it's the data we have. I hear you. And in retrospect, it probably would have made sense to do 6.1 because it's a small amount and it's symbolic. But I think at the time we started with the trustees and we said, hey, let's give them 5% because we want to do more than just COLA. Right. So we said 5. The 6.1 came up when we were actually doing some sort of moving number. Okay. It's a good suggestion.
Okay,
Thank you for the response.
Presented.
I'm good.
Public comment?
That's fine. Now that you have Friday free, you can work on the phone.
See, she's working all the time.
Kathleen Brand, Scio resident, parliamentary procedure, you can't change an agenda that you've already adopted. That's why I made the point about not moving public comment. Parliamentary procedure. Also, you guys should really think about whether you broke the OMA today when you knowingly knew another public meeting was being held. People in the public cannot attend 2 meetings. They are disallowed from being able to participate in 2 meetings. Really disappointed that you guys didn't change your time.
Yeah, I mean, I wish you would have said something. I didn't know that. I wish you would have told
Anyway. As a resident, I am very disappointed that you did not ask the trustees for input. When I was on this commission, I knew somewhat the workload, and I did a very detailed analysis of the workload of the trustees. I documented how many pages, how many hours of work it takes. You didn't ask the trustees, you should have, I believe. I'm gonna tell you, some trustees are really working very hard. And when you don't get their input, but some of this you should have asked the questions. For example, trustee Noel is in charge of planning land use. She probably works 30 hours a week. I probably work 20 hours a week. And I'm just disappointed that you didn't ask, and I don't understand why you didn't ask the trustees to. And honestly, as a resident, it sends the message that trustees are not valued for their service. Very disappointed. Also, I want to talk about the concept of ex parte communication. I purposely have not talked to any of you. I purposely didn't mention anything about trustees before you made your determination. That's the way it should be, that you are independent. But I'm concerned if anyone had any ex parte communications with any board members at any time. That's between you and your conscience, but
Why are you suggesting that we've done something?
I'm not, I'm
She's asking
not,
a question.
I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I understand. There's questions and there's questions. That seems like it's really pointed there.
John,
I'll remind you that this is public comment.
This is,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You're right.
this is my opinion as a resident. Honestly, I gave you the details that you chose not to look at, the data to do comparable to comparable. Just when I did all of that when I as a resident was participating.
Okay, thank you.
Can I address the trustee question, just because we did discuss it? I'd
Okay.
really like Kathleen to hear this, if it'd be okay?
Yes, please.
I just want to let you know, when we came together as only one previous board member. We came and we were delayed on our first meeting, we lost a member immediately. I will agree, it took a while to get ourselves going. When we had the meeting and decided we really wanted to hear from people, it's not an excuse, but just so you know, I remember asking, I can go back to the minutes, I think you'll all remember, I brought up and said, do we not need to bring our trustees in also to hear from them? I want you to hear that from me. I asked the question. And we have been on such a tight, difficult timeline in the time frame of getting a slow start, all brand new members, except for John, trying to do the best we can. So, I want you to know it wasn't unaddressed. We thought we would try and start where we thought we had to at the most critical values. So I just want you to know we did talk, I brought it up. We did talk about it. I don't know why we're limited to 15 days and 15 meetings, 45 days. I know it's determined by the state. We also did not have time to address what the board asked us to regarding committees. I, as a person on this committee, feel bad we didn't. I wish we had more time. We could have done more. I just want you to know it wasn't ignored. If it was a bad choice, I at least want you to know it was discussed. We didn't just totally overlook it. I suggested we need to ask trustees to come on that vote too. And then we will board decision. And like I said, I wanted to know we could talk about it and try to come to.
I would suggest that there's some guidelines for the committee that come.
In the future.
Because I had no guidance. Right. I got asked, I said, okay, I'll help out. And now I feel like, they threw us into this. We had no clue what, and we talked amongst ourselves. These are the important, we need to find out exactly what they're doing. They're the full-time employees, and we see the trustees in the meetings, but we don't see the clerk at work behind the desk. So I would say we need more guidance, more about these are the recommendations that you do. And I think we're all surprised. Oh, we have to have all this done by February 24th. I didn't get that memo. So we had no guidance.
Yeah, I will support, let's make this an evolutionary process.
Yeah.
We'll have some guidance to the next
Right.
meetings in 2 years so that
We can,
they consider this.
yes.
I will also say we were under no obligation to call any of
Anybody.
the officers or trustees.
Right.
It was something that was done to supervise the role only in 2023, as I recall.
That's not.
That's not true. No, that's not true. You did do the other officers. But there was no agenda.
There was also input from trustees.
Yes. Okay. And I remember the discussion. Should we invite the trustees? I felt comfortable enough with the current level of their salaries to say we did not. And that we could decide a number among ourselves. I own that. It was partly my decision. And that's where we are. We agree.
I'll pile on that point. We have like 4 guiding principles that our attorney has told us that we need to use in order to come up with the salary. We asked for comparables, we got the data back. When you look at the salaries, the only ones that I saw that were significantly above the median was the trustees by about 25%. I didn't think that, given the nature of the other 3 positions and our task and our time, I thought that we would do something for the trustees, but they were already beyond the median by about 25%. So, quite frankly, I know how hard you work, Kathleen. I've known you for years. I've known Kathy and all the other folks. I voted for you. I love all of you as friends and as family and as Scio Township community members. But in this case, we had a limited amount of time, and I felt that the trustees were already at a significantly higher than median level. So that was my reasoning, and I hope you can accept it.
Okay, no other,
Point of order. That has been pointed out. Are we done with public comment?
well, I don't see anybody online, so the answer to that is no. I'm sorry, is yes, there are no further public comments.
I wanted to address the parliamentary issue that somebody brought up, that we can't amend an agenda that's already adopted. So what do we do about the meeting for 2026?
Well, I don't know, you're not bound by Robert's Rules of Order. There's no statutory provision that you are required to follow Robert's Rules. Most meetings I go to, there's some variation on the strict letter of the book itself. So in this case, I don't think you need to do anything. But it's the purpose of Robert's Rules, of course, are to have orderly meetings, and I think that you did. That there's no statutory violation. The fact that you set a meeting by amending the agenda at the end of the meeting, it doesn't change the fact that you set a meeting. Or I should say the fact that it might be true, and I don't doubt Trustee Grant. I think she wouldn't have said it if she didn't know that she was right, that's what Robert's Rules say. That doesn't prevent you from doing either.
I just want to make sure we didn't have to call those meetings to continue.
No.
You can't call a meeting after Monday.
Right, that's what I mean. Would we have had to be Friday to set the
But
meeting?
officially,
for
we
2027?
canceled.
And that we need to make sure.
Oh,
that-
yes. Do we need to cancel Friday's meeting? It is scheduled.
You're still in session.
Okay. We have a
Make a
motion.
motion, we cancel Friday's meeting
And
as
I'll,
we have completed the task.
and I'll second that.
Aye.
Okay. Aye. Okay, motion carried. All right, and I think we're ready for a motion to.
I'll make a motion to
All
adjourn.
right, hold on a second. All right. Okay, and
I'll second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thanks, Bob, for the videoing, and thanks for everybody's participation.
All right, bye, public.
Drive safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I forgot to bring your headphones.